Well, that was an epic fail. So water tanks that don't hold water. So what are we going to do? Well, we are going to replace the access plate. The company that installed this did not put any type of gasket or sealant under the access plate, so water just leaks out like a sieve. And also the top, which is made for venting, once you put water in it, if it sloshes around, also spits out water. So we're not going to use that. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to remove this access plate, and I purchased a couple of deck plates by Beckson. And what we're going to do is go ahead and remove these screws, take off the access plate, and then set the new plate on top, mark for the holes, drill, and then I have some rubber sealing tape that I'm going to use around the inside of the lip on that access plate, and then I will through bolt it with some stainless steel bolts and washers and a lock nut, and hopefully that gives me a watertight seal, as it should be. So hang on, we'll get set up for that. Now with the old access plate taken off, basically they didn't even pre-drill. They just went ahead and set the plate on and then screwed it down, which raised the holes. So we're just going to take a razor blade and gently flatten that out. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there is a little bit of a ridge on here. When they drive it in, it melts the plastic and it just kind of pulls up. So with a razor blade, we can just take and shave a little bit of that off, just like so, and then that leaves a nice flat surface. So with the old access plate removed and everything shaved down so it's nice and flat, then we can take our new plate, put it in position. Next thing we have to do is we're going to have to mark our holes. Now this has just a little bit of play, so I'm going to center it the best I can, mark my holes, pre-drill, turn it over, and then I'll be able to put my sealant tape on here, and I'll probably pre-drill through the sealant tape and then stick the bolts in and then gently put it into place and then fasten it from underneath. I'll use a pencil, just kind of mark my holes, and then I'll check my alignment and see if there's any gap in here. Alright, I think that's going to work alright. I'll give you a shot of that real quick. So these will be where my new holes would be, and I think I'm not too close to the edge. Maybe this one's just a little close, but I think it's going to be okay. So next step is to go ahead and pre-drill these and install my tape onto my ring, and then we'll put that back in place. So with all the holes pre-drilled now, I just take my stainless steel bolt, make sure that it fits very nice, and then we can install the access plate, putting that in place just like that. We'll put the nut and washer and nuts under here, and we'll tighten everything down, and voila, we should have something that is watertight. So now we'll just take our tape and slowly just kind of put it around the edge, and hopefully we make a nice tight seal. Take that off a little bit, put that right over top of our holes as we go around. So with that said and done, hopefully we have a nice sealed edge. So next is we're going to take our drill, we'll go ahead and tap into the gasket, and then we'll be ready to mount. Okay, so we have our bolts in place, and now we're just ready for a test fit to make sure that we might seal up all the holes that are around here. I think some of the holes are just a little bit wide, so we'll just see. I think we're going to be good. Yep. So that should seal any other holes that are punctured through here, and once we bolt that down, it'll squeeze it and make a nice seal. With any luck, this one will hold water. So I'm using a 10 by 24 nut and bolt, and it's a lock nut and a couple of washers on here on the back side. So next, I have all the nuts attached to the back. Now we're just going to take our handy dandy little wrench, put it behind here, and gently screw fasten these down, and we'll just go opposite, just like you were tightening a tire on your car, and hopefully that draws that down and seals any possible leaks. So all I did was taking my wrench, I put on the back side here, and I taken my electric drill and tightened down the screws. I didn't bottom them out. I didn't draw everything flat against the surface. And as you can see, there's still just a little bit of a gap around here, which is sealed by the tape. Next is to put the lid on just to make sure that it still fits, because I don't want to make everything all wobbly like. Oh, look at that. Fits nice and snug. So now the real test comes. Will it hold water? I haven't tried this yet, so you're seeing it for the first time as I am. Let's hope there's no leaks. Yeah. That's it. Perfect. I'm much happier with that. Perfect. All right. That is that. It gave a nice seal around there. Plus I have access now. I can put all my fittings on, and we can start installing this thing. I have one more tank to install an access plate on. Then we'll be able to put these in the trailer and start marking out where we want to put our bulkhead fittings in the tanks and begin hooking things up. Cool. Well, at least we'll have running water when we want it and where we want it this time, instead of all over the place. Cool. Stay tuned. Okay. So this is the second tank, and got the plate installed. I guess we'll just try and see if it'll hold water. All right. A little bit over my head for some trustworthiness. All right. Sweet. I'm much happier with that. Well, now we have a couple of tanks that are, well, I guess they're worth the money spent now, but they don't leak, and they're going to perform very well, and I'm happy with the access plates on each one. They turned out well, and cool. Now we're looking forward to installing them. Well, I can't tell you how much better I feel knowing that the tanks aren't going to leak when they slosh around now. When I first tested those tanks to see if they leaked, I was very disappointed, so I stewed about it all week. How am I going to seal these tanks so they don't leak? And so I remembered from my old marine boat building days these access plates, and went down to my local marine dealer and talked to Gary Walker and said, hey, this is what I need. So they hooked me up, and they worked out just fine. So I am tickled to death now. So I've got a couple of water tanks, and I also have some fittings. So our next task will be to put the tanks in place and start marking where we want the bulkhead fittings, so we'll be able to drain and be able to pump water and be able to drain the sink into the tank. So I've got a couple of shut-off valves also, and I'm just not certain that the fittings that I have are going to be just the right fittings, so I'll probably take about 101 trips to the store trying to get the right fitting to do the job, and that may take a little bit of time. So what I'll end up doing right now is go ahead and put everything in place and start thinking about how I'm going to run the fittings. So there we go. If you happen to get a couple of tanks and they don't perform too well, remember, get yourself some Beckson access plates. They work very well. The tape that I use is a rubber. It's not a squishy foam rubber. It's a harder, more dense rubber seal that I put around the outside. I thought about some butyl tape or putty tape or silicone, but you know, I am using potable water. I may want to drink out of this, so last thing I want to do is make it toxic. Probably not the way you want to intoxicate yourself. No pun intended. Ah! Okay, well, that's a wrap for this one. Next is the install. Stay tuned.